secrets to this Kast King WhiteMax reel. I'm going to do some oiling. I buy this real butter is what I use, and this maintenance will really help keep your reel in shape, and it'll make it last a lot longer for you. First thing I do is, if I'm going to leave the line on, I put a little piece of tape here to hold it in place. That way it don't come loose whenever I'm taking everything apart. Now on this Kast King reel, you can see there's a little lever right here. Now you push that lever and then you turn this, and opposite to a lot of my reels, this door goes down instead of up. It goes about the same distance but going down instead of up. You take this apart and you can see this reel's a little beefy compared to some of the other ones I've had too. Now you just slide your spool out of there and set those two things aside. And just like most reels you get, you're gonna oil right down in here, just a drop or two. Put a little bit right here, that spins as well. I'm gonna put a little bit on this shaft because that's what locks it. And then you can see in here where your button is, there's a shaft there. You can put a little oil on that too, make your button easier to push. Wiggle that a little bit, get some of that oil in there. Okay, I'm gonna set that reel down, and you can see if you've got any grime or anything, dirt on these shafts, just wipe them down with the rag. And this looks a lot like most spools and baitcasters. It's got a bearing there, put a couple drops of oil on, a little bit on that shaft, a little bit on the other side. Okay, now I'm gonna put this right back down in there. All right, now I'm gonna set that down. I'm gonna take my door. Okay, you see you got a few moving parts right here in this door. That's a little different than a lot of them. So I'm just gonna barely put any down there. Move that a little bit. Work it in there. And then I'm gonna take and put just barely a drop on each brake. And then down in here, put a couple drops down in there on that bearing. That should be all you have to do to that door. Okay, so wiggle that down in there to where it fits good, and then twist it up until it locks. Once you've got that, you're ready to move on to the front of the reel. Now you see down in there, you're going to want to put a little bit of oil on that silver shaft there, and then a little bit on that bigger black shaft there. And down on inside that black shaft, you'll have some worm gears. Put a little bit on those too. And then spin this reel a little bit and work it. That clicking you hear is the line. It's nothing to do with the reel. I'll work it in there a little bit, and then I'll move on to this next part. Okay, first thing I'm going to want to do is take this screw out. Most reels nowadays are built pretty similar. You've got a keeper right here. This one's a little harder to get out than my other ones. There we go. Here it comes. Okay, you can see that keeper right there. And then you've got a nut right here. You're just gonna loosen that nut. Take it right off. Take your handle off. Below the handle, you'll have a little washer. And then you'll twist off this drag handle And it's going to click and click and click, and then it'll stop and you can twist it right off there. Okay, so you see there's a washer down inside that drag handle too, so make sure you don't lose it. Okay, and right here, get this where you can see it pretty good. You're just going to slide this off and try to keep this all together. It's got 2 washers inside there, but set it down. Here's a spot where you can get a little dirt and mess in there, so when I take it apart, I usually wipe it off. And it's got another washer there too. Some of my other ones don't have that, but I'll take it off so I can get a little better clean here. Once you got it clean, a little oil on these bearings. You got that little washer you just took off. Put it back on there. Now this little unit you took off, slide back down. I'm going to get it level there. Okay. Then you had this washer that was inside of the drag handle. I'm going to put it on. And this drag handle, you can see has some ribs in it. And if it's getting hard to turn, you can put a little oil on those ribs. And then screw this back on. Now when you screw this back on, make sure that you get it going right. It should just spin really easy, just like that, until you get down to that keeper. Now when you get down to that keeper, this is going to want to go back and forth and that shaft will just spin. So hold your line guide right there as you twist this back on there. Whoop, you can see right there, you got to be watching this stuff, because if you put too much pressure on it, you can really break it. You see how that kind of got twisted at an angle. You want to make sure that you get that straight in there and everything works. Now you can see where it's hanging right here. I'm going to see if I can push that in. This screwdriver may be a little too, there it went. Okay, now pop that in and you can see now that piece is level right there. You wouldn't want to force it if it doesn't go on easy. And what I could feel there was this right here wanting to move real hard against my thumb. It shouldn't be pushing on your thumb much right there. So if it is, you've got something out of whack. Okay, you don't have to screw this down tight. Just kind of get it down the shaft a little bit. You can see it's got that shaft is kind of a 2-part. You can see an indention right there. Get it down past that indention, but that's all you have to do. Now, you put your washer back on there, and then your handle goes on, and then your nut, and your nut's another one of those things to make sure that you're getting it on straight. Go on real easy till it gets tight. Put you a little bit of tightness on there. Don't have to be much. You have this keeper to keep that from backing off. Now when you put this keeper on here, it can be a little off. You see how it's a little off there? Your hole's not lined up. So you may either have to back it up or tighten it to get that to line up the right way to where you can get your screw in there. Now you sure don't want it loose, but you don't want to over tighten it, so you kind of have to decide which way you want to go with it to get that hole to line up. Once you've got that lined up, You just put your screw back in there. Get it snugged up pretty good. Now, to do your handles, these KastKing reels are one of the harder to remove. They have these plugs here, and they look like you would take a screwdriver and unscrew them. That's not how it works. They just pry out of there, so you've got to get under them and pry, and you can see they're plastic, so they can break. But once you get that out, you've got a screw down in there, and then they just work pretty much like any other reel that you have, at least most of the ones I've used. Now, you've got a little bearing here, which is a little better bearing than what most budget type reels come with. This one's metal. A lot of them are just a plastic bushing. So it's strange that, to me, that they used a plastic plug in the end of these and then used like a really good bearing in the handle there. So put your little oil on that shaft of that handle and in that bearing. Put your screw back in. And then just put your plug back on there. And then you'll do the other one the same way. Show you kind of how I had to do that one, is pry that screwdriver under there almost as far as it'll go. You can see about how far it goes. Then just kind of twist and work it. You want to be careful not to break it, so I'll just kind of go around it and try to be careful with it. And then you just do the exact same thing you did on the other side. Pretty impressed that they have that metal bearing right there in a cheap reel like this. This reel is about, I believe, $35 or $40. So it's a really good deal. I've used it for quite a bit, or quite a long time, and hadn't had any problems with it. It's one of my better casting reels, and I'll do a review on it soon. But for the price, it was an awesome reel. And the reason I went with KastKing on this was it actually was a 5-3-1 gear ratio. And there's not a whole lot of those out there, especially budget types. Anyway, so once you get that done, work all that grease or oil in there. Any spots you have that had oil getting out or anything, wipe them down with a rag. And that reel is ready to go.